Just fucking do it. Subscribe now.
Be able to show you these guys, they wouldn't have done any deals if they hadn't made any cold calls. The second thing is, I know for you, I can't say it without laughing, because I'm about to say a big lie. And I had a problem when I was growing up. Whenever I was going to lie, I'd start smiling. Got me in a lot of fucking trouble. But anyway, and for you astute transaction professionals that I have the privilege of being, I can't even get it out of my fucking mouth. For you astute financial professionals that I have the privilege of being in front of, if you listen to the questions that I ask, compared to the questions that the meatheads ask, all the meatheads' questions are around their emotional bank account that they don't have. Yeah. I mean, okay, and he's made a couple more acquisitions. Of course, he's got his new car, and so and he's done well. But he is working too much in the business and not enough on the business, and that's why he hasn't found the right people to be those regional managers yet, as has Andres, for example. Because you can't build beyond 8 or 10 or so without other additional layers of management. The comments, questions about, yes, sir.
Your comment you just made now, does that go back to what Jason Nagy was saying? Once you get into the industry, don't go into the industry you're currently in, because you'll just navigate when there's a problem. You'll navigate to fix it. And is that the issue that's happening with Simon? Because he's already in this industry. And so there's an issue and he just...
Well, it's like I said yesterday, maybe even today and yesterday, I'm apprehensive about energy deals because I know what the fuck can go wrong. I mean, I know the upline streams and supply chain and all this shit. I know what can go wrong. And so I'm not active at all in any of the energy deals. When you know too much about it, it's like I tell you IT guys, don't go in IT. I tell you, whereas healthcare, it's easier because he's a well-educated professional nurse. Physicians are well-educated. They don't know how to manage anything, but it's easier for them to buy things because they're given the benefit of the doubt. The banks, commercial lending, they give them the benefit of the doubt. And even seller finance, they give them the benefit of the doubt. They shouldn't, but they do. But not all medical people go into the medical field. Most do. And they make their money on the first roll-up, and then they exit, and then they do a roll-up in something else. But inherently, with this model, even though it's hard to believe, it's impossible to believe, the less you know, the better off you are. Because the more you know what the fuck can go wrong. And even though your conscious mind doesn't tell you that, your subconscious knows that I can get fucked up here. Like we had a guy a few years ago, this is before Corona and all the problems with supply chain. Okay. He did a supply chain roll-up. And slowly, because he knows, we hadn't had a pandemic. We hadn't had all this shit, but he said, and this is when we had the mentor program and the Zoom calls once a month. If this happens, or we have a smallpox epidemic, or we got this, things are going to get fucked up. Well, fortunately for him, he already exited before Corona came around. But, and he said if something like this ever happened, no matter how, you can't plan in supply chain management for certain things. You just can't. No matter what you tell the board in the PowerPoint presentation, that's all bullshit. There's certain things, and that's exactly what's happened. And we're the remnants, and even though hopefully it's the remnants of COVID, how many times have you heard supply chain this, supply chain that? So, but he needs a couple of regional managers for him to get to the next level. But, he's built up about 10 million in top line and about 2 million in EBITDA. And you put a multiple on the 2 million in EBITDA, and he has about 68 or 69% of it. Other questions about Simon or comments? Yes, sir.
It's more of a statement. So he's got your influencers on the wall, right? Is he having meetings with that? Is he having meetings with that too? Or
Has he had meetings?
No, meetings with the influencers on the back.
Well, I mean,
That's how we
most
go.
of them are dead.
No, I know.
Other than me, I mean, Hitler, virtually every person on that wall, save 2 or 3, I met over my career. So, but I've been around 50 years, okay? So when you put up influencers, other than perhaps me, you're not going to say that you met Walt Disney, even though Walt Disney was a great, iconic guy. Bunker Hunt, some of these guys. John Kennedy, the former president. So, but they can influence your life even if you haven't met them. But I mean, normally 9 times out of 10, the influencers that you kids have are influencers that they got from me vis-a-vis my influencers. Although there's a couple of modern day guys that, cloud guys and not supply chain, but the block guys that I don't know. I don't even know their names, that are famous for creating stuff. I only recently found out the names of the 2 guys that founded Google. And because one of them's getting a divorce, it's going to cost them about $9 billion. So that attracted my attention when I read the article. We call it QLA, and we're borrowing the system or the model from dating back to Andrew Carnegie. But the methodology, some of the nuances have changed, but the overall methodology has not. The being focused on the few, run towards the gunfire, tough, ruthless. I mean, none of that's changed. None of that's changed. Although, as I've said several times now, you relate to some of these guys because of what they've accomplished and how they've changed the world. Okay. But you haven't focused on how they did it. Some of you have focused on why they did it to change the world. Sure, that's easy. Now, people say, I've changed the world, a couple $1 trillion and 1 million millionaires. Well, I have, but that certainly wasn't my fucking idea or purpose when I started this. It's a happenstance of creating a lot of wealth and then what those people, those individuals have done with that wealth. So I'm getting vicarious credit for that. Okay? I also get vicarious credit for the bank robbers and the murders and the shit that I produced. Okay? Fortunately, there's a lot less than them, and so it doesn't hit the news. But, I mean, you will round out the edges or soften the edges of the QLA model to fit your personality. But if you round off the rough edges too much, you won't be as effective. If you just kind of tart it up to make so you're comfortable being uncomfortable, you'll make a shit ton of money. But a lot of the kids, don't want to be associated with certain aspects of the toughness. Yes, you're in the back.
Yes, my assumption is that when he said I'm not really focusing on revenue, I'm focusing more on EBITDA, is that for the exit strategy?
Correct. And 2 or 3 of these guys have been asked, not by this group, but by the audiences that are in front of them, what about organic growth? And they've all said the same thing. We don't worry about that. We just buy revenue. Because organic growth, you don't know what the result's going to be. You hope what the results are going to be, but hope is not a strategy. You don't have to hope on this. Now we've even got it down to, 500 to 1,200 calls during Corona. You're a millionaire. It's not maybe. It's not perhaps. It's not, whether you're in Manchester or you're in Rotterdam. It's abso-fucking-lute. So we've taken the smoke and a lot of the mirrors out of it. But see, that in turn puts more pressure on you because you know if you don't make the 500 to 1,200 calls, you know almost to the penny how much it's costing you on a financial side. Now, you can multiply that times 10 or 1,000 or a million, depending on how weak your emotional bank account is. And some people, a rut is a coffin with the ends knocked out. And you get in a rut, it's not working, and you eventually, get tired of digging and you give up. But the kids that don't give up at any level, but at some level, but not in the major level, eventually make a lot of money. Then you have to give the definition of what's a lot of money and what's not a lot of money. Now, these numbers, to me, are pretty not meaningless. Because if you never had $100,000, it's a big fucking deal. And I remember the first day I made $100,000 in a day. So long time ago. So I can kind of, in my memory bank back here, remember what that felt like. I remember I went and I bought 4 tailor-made suits, a new car, and I went out, not on a drunk binge, but high-class restaurants, nightclubs, etc. And I dropped about 40 of the 60. 40 of the 60. And I knew it was money well spent. But you heard Simon, he spends 150% of what he makes. I only spent 120, 125. But I never had a backup plan. Because what do you do when you have a backup plan? Even if you don't consciously use it, subconsciously, when you got 2 more hours in the day to make cold calls and you don't do it. Or you've got Saturday afternoon to make cold calls and you don't do it. And even though I tell you you shouldn't go to your kid's soccer game, you decide to go to your kid's soccer game. I've had 3 generations here where the kid, the 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, told she told her father, you should have come to less of my soccer games. You might have accomplished something in your life. Now that's hard. That's fucking cold. But that's what they think of you. You're deluding yourself. The best example is the preacher man's son comes home, Daddy, why is our house not as big as Johnny Beva's house? Doesn't God pay well? God damn. Fuck. That's crystal clear. And you think the kids don't know? And then, of course, the Chinese guy who at Grand Canyon, coward, the kids called him a coward. Jesus Christ, that's brutal. And if you think any different when I ask you what do your kids think of you, and you're full of shit, you don't know. Especially, and that's another reason people don't leave the ghetto, because, everybody's the same in the ghetto, or more or less the same. There's a head of the pack, top dog, but everybody else is pretty much the same. And the kids are perceptive, especially now on the internet. Even in the fucking barrio, in the ghetto, the kids have access to computers. And they look up, this kind of shit. And normally there's only a couple ways out of that kind of poverty. And it's normally through athletics or education. Athletics, you make a lot more money. Education, a school teacher, a policeman, a fireman. These are all honorable professions. But it's not like being Pele or some superstar that's playing international sports. Anything else about Simon? Okay, thanks, Kat.